Okay, so last time we're looking at our good dear friend, Dr. Leibniz, talking about the monads. And as we saw, his view is essentially they are metaphysical points. So they're not extended, they're not abstractions, they're real things somehow. And they're metaphysical symbols in that they have no parts inside them. Even if you had the sharpest knife in reality, a Hanzo sword, you could not cut a monad. And we're monads, everything's monads. And kind of the weirdest thing about them is each monad is aware. It's a mind of sorts. Now in the case of us, each of us is a monad. So all your thoughts, feelings, and desires are inside the monad that is you. And everything else, including like the desk, tables, and chairs, water, your sandwich, those are all monads too. So, you've heard the expression, taste the rainbow, you're actually tasting the monads. Which sounds like a porno movie, but probably is. Now, what are some other qualities of these monads? Well, one of the signature quotes for Leibniz is that monads are windowless. So does that mean that if you were a window salesperson, you should call up the monads and try to sell them some windows? And the answer is no. But here's what he means. He claims that monads don't interact with each other. Each one is self-enclosed and self-sufficient. So each one is almost like a world unto itself. And he says the monadology, the monads have no windows through which anything can enter or depart. So, sort of crudely speaking, with my badly drawn thing here, there's no like holes in them. So to use like an analogy to a cell, we know from like cell biology that our cells allow stuff to go in, hopefully nutrients, but also things like viruses, and if stuff leaves our cells, toxins, etc. But the monads are windowless. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. So it's like a super prison. Now, each monad, then of course the question is, so how does the monad relate to all the things if there's no interaction? And the way I always kind of picture them, which is of course totally accurate, is like a basket of, or a bowl of ball bearings. These silver mirrored ball bearings, not interactive. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Now the reason why I like the analogy of shiny ball bearings is, in addition to being round and shiny, ball bearings being shiny do what? Mirrors are also shiny. What do mirrors do? Besides tell us who the most fairest of the land is. Mirrors reflect. Yeah, so each monad mirrors or reflects the entire world. So each of us is a mirror of all of reality. Now, this means there's no dichotomy between your inner world and the outer world. The inner world of experience and the outer world. And it solves the problem, he thinks, about how things can get into the mind. It also avoids a problem that bedeviled Descartes, namely, how do we know that what's in your mind matches what's out there? And the answer, of course, is, strictly speaking, on Descartes' view, there's just other, on Leibniz's view, there's just other monads out there, but there is no physical external reality. So in kind of a weird way, it solves a problem in the external world by essentially not having one, in a way. Now, you also, of course, have your inner experiences. What we normally consider inner experiences, like your thoughts, feelings, and desires. But everything for him is in that monad. So all your life experiences, all that you are, all you experience, you are the monad, so it's all in there. Nothing comes in from the outside. And of course, every monad, on his view, thanks to identity of indiscernibles, is different. I am not you, you are not me, I am not Donald Trump, therefore you are not Donald Trump. Unless you are, in which case you would be Donald Trump. Now the problem then arises which is not the problem of the external world, like, you know, how do I know that what's in here matches what's out there? And the answer is, well, it doesn't. There's just in here, there is no out there. But intuitively think this. I mean, take the example of the room. Do we think we're in a room?
Yes.
Yeah. And we think that the other people in the room are seeing it like from their own perspective, like their viewpoint. But we think that everyone is experiencing the room. And so the question would be is, if you believe monads, how does that work? Because, you know, on a view like, you know, Descartes, once you get the external world, there's a physical extended room, our bodies are in the room, we're, you know, looking at each other, and so our minds are getting data about the room. So Descartes' drawing of the room would be what we normally think of. It would look like a drawing of the room. You know, us in the room, positioned here, you know, that'd be a map of the room. But for Leibniz, your room is in your mind. My room is in my mind. Same for everybody else. And same for the desks and the chairs and so forth. It's all in their minds. So how then do we get, you know, well, I guess it'd be a very practical problem. When I'm, you know, moving my pie port, how can you hear the words that are coming out of that? And on the one hand, the answer is you can't, because there's no interaction. Our monads are totally isolated. You cannot hear my words. I cannot hear your words. It sounds poetical, almost. But here's how it works. The experiences we all have come from God. But he's not beaming them into us. Because, I mean, one way we could explain it is this. Think about, well, you think about playing a video game, or watching a streaming video on the Netflix, or the Hulu Flix, or the Netbook. Now, or like going to the example of the video game, you know, if you get your screen, and there are other people playing, you know, a PC game or say Xbox or something, you've got a central server, or got a server serving up all the stuff to the different screens. So when you're virtually running around in the game world, say like in Destiny, running around on Mars or something, and other people are playing the same game, you know, they're in the same game universe, the server is making sure that you're all experiencing the same stuff. Now, for Leibniz though, there's no interaction between, going with our computer analogy, no interaction between them. So there's not like a server serving it up, live streaming it. But there's something kind of similar. Here's how he thinks it works. You get God, who is the supreme monad. And each of us, you can go back to the computer analogy, each of us is experiencing our reality like a player experiencing the game. Now, God is not serving up the experiences live. So God is not live streaming to us. So in a way, what's occurring now is not happening live. What happened, according to Leibniz, is this. It's, to go with the computer analogy, it'd be like having on your hard drive already everything that's going to happen in the game. It's already in there. And as you play it, it's occurring on the screen, as if it's happening like in real time, but it's already all there. Going back to the monads, your entire life is, to use the computer analogy, is preloaded on the, well, we'll give everybody a free upgrade, on the SSD of your life. None of those crappy, platter-driven hard drives. Get the fancy, high-speed solid-state drives. And so it's all in there. And then what happens, of course, as you experience it, it's sort of being played for you. But all that stuff is already in there. So all your experiences, all your thoughts, beliefs, and desires already preloaded, of course.
So I want to continue your analogy. So Descartes is more along the lines of you're playing, say, Diablo with your friends, and Leibniz is more you're playing Diablo alone just against the computer.
Yes, but you think the computer, well, everyone's playing Diablo, and everyone thinks they're playing with their friends, but everyone is playing with the computer. So, yeah, going with the Diablo analogy, good one, because, in Descartes' view, here I am at my computer, here's like you and other people, and we're, going and fighting Diablo. And so on Descartes' view, yeah, we're all sitting at our computers, we're networked together, we're playing the same world and interacting. Yeah, on Leibniz's view, yeah, we're all sitting in our computers, and like in my game, there's three people in there with me. Oh, I think there's like three, characters, like the assassin, the barbarian, and the necromancer in there. And then, of course, from your perspective, my paladin's in there with, your necromancer and someone else's, Amazon, etc. But I'm not actually, playing that character in your game, but my character is doing all the stuff in your game that I'm doing in my game. So even though there's no connection between us, it all feels like we're playing the same game, with that analogy. So it would be like, going to Diablo, it would be like we're all playing Diablo, and we all think we're playing together, but we're really, but the computer is playing us in each case. So everything I do in my game, my character does in your game, even though I'm not controlling that character. It just happens like I go, running over, fighting Diablo, and then in your game and everyone else's game, that's what you see happen, even though I'm not controlling that character. But as far as the experience goes, it's as if we're all connected. So, you can imagine there was a game like that where everything you do is like preloaded on your computer, and so it seems like, you're all playing together, but you're really not. You have essentially, pre-synchronized hard drives. Yeah, good analogy. Because Diablo is a perfect analogy for it.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, so a solution to this is that pre-established harmony. So we are, not experiencing the external world. It's just going with it. Again, the analogy of the hard drive is it's all loaded in there. So like at this moment, from my experience, I'm typing out on like the chat thing, like, whoop, BRB, or AFK needs stacks. And then of course you would see appear in, your game, the same thing, AFK needs stacks. But of course I'm not actually typing that in your game. God has loaded that into your hard drive. So switching back to the monad thing, your whole life is like a game of Diablo. In this sense, that here's the monad that is you, and all that's going to happen to you is in your hard drive. And but of course you experience it like a movie being played, a frame at a time. So all the things that are going to occur. Going with we can switch to a movie analogy. When you get the DVD, the ending's already in there. But of course you've got to watch of course, you can skip ahead, but it's like a VHS tape. You stick it in, you got to watch the whole. There's no chapter. You can fast forward. There's no chapters. Yeah, so you got to sit there and watch the whole thing to get through. But it's already all in there. So your entire life, according to Leibniz, is already in there.
In there, we just like experiencing it.
Yeah, you just experience it, moment to moment. So yeah, like a DVD playing on,
Okay, so that's why. So Leibniz, how do you pronounce this?
Oh, Leibniz.
Oh, Leibniz. Sorry. Okay, so he believes that God is the supreme monad,
Yep.
and then that God is not live streaming, and everything that's going to happen is already there. That's him.
Yep. So he believes that God creates all the other monads, and then he makes sure, because he's the supreme monad, the greatest monad of all, and he makes everything else, and then preloaded in every monad is all its experience, thoughts, desires, and feelings. And because then the question is, well, how do we all, get along? How is it that when I'm, my pipeboard is, as I'm thinking my pipeboard is moving, and you think you're hearing, words, how does that work? Well, God's basically sync things up. So if it's, 1 p.m., February 23rd, 2016, and I'm saying that, I say Trump, then at that timestamp in your monad hard drive, then boop, you have that experience of as if I'm saying it. Just like, going back to the computer game analogy, it's, whatever occurs in the game, in my game at that time, you see occurring in your game at that time, but from your perspective. Yeah, so God's not like the server, live streaming, Netflix or, serving up the game. The entire game is already in there, and you just essentially watch it play out. Now that opens up an interesting possibility that Leibniz doesn't really discuss much, which is this. Going back to the analogy of the DVD, suppose you get a DVD and all of the endings on there, or you get a book and the ending's in there, what could you do?
Skip to the back.
Yeah, you could skip ahead and see how it's going to turn out. So one interesting possibility is if all your stuff is preloaded in your monad, in theory at least, you could peek ahead and see how things are going to turn out. So if a person, people often talk about things like deja vu all over again, or people having precognition, knowing what's going to happen. And Leibniz's view would definitely allow for that because the whole script is in there, and if you could peek ahead and see what's going to happen, then you would see it. Now, of course, because it's all sort of pre-established harmony, that means your peeking ahead is already in there too.
As well.
Yeah, so your peeking ahead
See,
would be.
now I'm thinking about space pause.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like barf.
Or like the scene when they're like, we forgot what's going on, and they get the movie and they fast forward.
Yeah, fast forward to see what they're.
Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yep, same basic thing. And of course they do that because, they're movie characters actually according to the script. Yeah, so his solution to the problem of how everything works together in his sort of trademark thing is pre-established harmony. God creates each of the monads. Each one is preloaded with a movie that's life, and he ensures that the perspective is right. So your monad, that is you, perceives your room from your perspective, just like in a good model of this would be a video game or a computer construct. You're observing it from your perspective, and you have that your world is not like an objective external world, it's a world that's entirely in your mind. Just like if you're playing an Xbox game, you're not playing in an objective external world, you're not all there together, on Mars and Destiny or, in the desert and Diablo. You're in your computer game, but it's as if it's from your perspective. And so everyone has their computer game from their perspective. And God makes sure that everything is properly synchronized. And he used two analogies for this, because it's before, Diablo. The first one was the idea of basically the clocks. Like the movies, they say synchronized watches, and you have the clocks, ticking away. So even though the clocks are not influencing each other, they're at the same time. He used the second analogy of musicians in separate rooms, following the same score with a metronome, following the metronome. Now, of course, the critical difference between clocks and metronomes and pre-established harmony is obviously a musician could get out of sync, or the clocks could get out of sync, but we always stay in sync. So, according to Leibniz, you can be confident that when in your mind, when my piport's saying this, that you can be confident that in my monad, I'm having the experience of my piport saying words. Even though you're not hearing my words, you're hearing words in your mind that are the words of your experience of me, which is not me. And when you eat a sandwich, you never actually experience the sandwich, you merely experience your experience of experiencing that experience. So the sandwich you eat is in your mind. There is no sandwich, in a way. But in a weird way, there is. So yeah, so here'd be like the sandwich monad, and you're not actually eating it. It's not actually being eaten, but you experience it as if you're eating it, and it experiences it as if it's being eaten. But no one is eaten, and no one is being eaten. So, pretty weird. So, but you don't have to worry about, I guess in a way it provides an interesting way out of the problem of eating meat. We never actually eat meat. because the meat cannot be, you only have your experience of experiencing it, you know, as if you're eating meat, but the meat remains uneaten, because we can eat nothing. So we actually, no one is a carnivore. No one eats meat. Problem solved. Thank you, Peter. I've solved your problem. I assume I get some kind of like prize, Nobel Prize for that. So then, okay, so key points there are basically pre-established harmony. What is it? What's it supposed to solve? Well, what it is, again, is that when God creates each of the monads, each one has all its experiences within it, and God ensures they, sync up. So your experience from your perspective at this moment matches, corresponds, is similar to my experience at this moment from my perspective. So it's as if we are in the room. And again, the modern concept of virtual reality is actually a perfect model for this. It is as if each of us is wearing, those, Oculus, things. We're each experiencing our own, computer simulation, but they're similar enough that we could say, okay, yes, we're not in the same room, obviously, because there is no room, but effectively we're in the same room. We're having similar sort of experiences. And what it tries to solve, again, is the problem of, external world, and the problem of interaction, and of course the problem of, it doesn't make any sense if we're not all experiencing the same stuff. And I guess it would be kind of interesting if there were like mistakes. Like if yours is out of sync with someone else, so you're like 5 minutes ahead of everyone else, or you already like left a room or something. But of course you have no way of knowing. Now, if there's no, out there, how do we handle two very important concepts in physics and philosophy, namely space and time, or as people like to say, space-time? Well, the common sense view of space is what? That space is a place where you keep your stuff. Which is not like space, because keep my stuff. Our good dead friend Newton regarded space as kind of like a box. If you were to take all the stuff in it, just like, if you get a box from Amazon, you take out all the stuff you've got, you still have the box. So Newtonian space is actually like a thing. So if you pulled out all the planets and, stars and black holes and so forth, you still have the box left. Leibniz, though, also similarly for time. One conception of time is that time is like, works kind of the same way like space. When we think of, think of like time travel, in science fiction. That requires that time work rather like space, because we know like traveling around space makes sense, but time travel does require that space or that time work kind of like space. That 1971 is a place you can go to as it's a time that you can go to. So it'd be like a timeline. You hop back to which of course leads to interesting questions about, is that possible? Can that be done? And how do you handle all the various plot holes and problems that come up with time travel? And the answer is usually by making stuff up, like fixed points in history and time lords and stuff. Now, so what does Leibniz do about space? Well, for him, since all there are monads, the monads are not extended, there is no space in the Newtonian sense. So there's not like a big empty box in which we put our stuff. But do we seem to experience space? Yeah, for example, suppose you want to go to Dayton, Ohio for spring break. Dayton, Ohio, spring break capital. That is a lie. Now, it seems like it's quite a ways away. So, or even just in this room, it seems to be space. I have to walk over to get to places. And I always thought it'd be much easier if you could just get rid of all that space and just be someplace. Because I hate to fly, because it's awful now. Now, for Leibniz, though, there is no extension, so there is no space in the traditional sense. So what is space then? Well, for him, It's kind of an illusion, but also kind of real. It's essentially, roughly put, what we experience. And again, interestingly enough, one of the best ways to sort of explain how Leibniz space works is space in a video game or like a computer, you know, any computer sort of stuff. Now, when you're playing a video game, like a first-person shooter, or watching a 3D movie, which is also a good analogy, is it as if you're experiencing space?
I guess in terms of the map that you're exploring.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you have, good quality graphics, in the way you experience it basically is what? Something's farther away means it looks, yeah, smaller. And it takes you time, longer time to seemingly get to it. But if you go to, let's use the analogy of a 3D movie. Is a 3D movie really 3D? No, I mean, it's 2D, it's projected on the screen. But the glasses, basically trick your brain to thinking it's three-dimensional. And what Leibniz would say is that essentially that's what's happening all the time. The life is a 3D movie, as well as a box of chocolates. Because it's as if we're in 3 dimensions, and we're experiencing it as what we think of 3 dimensions, but it's really not 3 dimensions. And the answer as to how that's possible is nicely illustrated by movies and computer games. You go to a 3D movie, it's as if you're in 3 dimensions, but you're not. The movie is projected on the screen. When you're playing a video game, you're not really in a 3-dimensional space, but it creates that effect by shading and lighting and making things bigger and smaller. And so Leibniz thinks that that's what you experience. So it's exactly like having a 3D movie playing in your mind. And it seems 3D, but it's not. So what has he written about that? Well, the good question is, how could you tell? How could you prove him wrong? That we're not experiencing 3D, like in a movie or a video game. This really is 3-dimensional. It really is extended. What would be the difference? What would be the giveaway? I mean, like in a movie like Blazing Saddles or like a Truman Show, stuff is fake because the giveaway is you go in the building and there is no building, it's just a facade, it's just a fake. But what would reveal it to us that Leibniz is wrong, that there really is space? Well, the answer seems to be nothing. It's totally compatible. Whether we're intuitively in 3-dimensional space with like real tables and chairs extended, or we're in Leibniz's we're monads experiencing 3-dimensional stuff like we would in a movie or a game. There's no way to tell, it would seem. Now, Leibniz avoids the problem of the external world in kind of a weird way, because there is no problem, because his view is there's nothing aside from the monads, there's nothing outside of your mind. So the wall actually is in my mind. My experience with other people is in my mind. It's all in my mind. Donald Trump is in my mind. Oh, God. Sorry. Had a moment there. But then again, I'm in his mind too, so I guess it's bad for him as well. If he doesn't believe it, which he probably does not. Now, what about time? Is time like a box that we can travel around in?
Not at this point.
Yeah. So, for Leibniz, time is basically like space. It's not a thing that is, it's basically just our organization of experience. I mean, one way to kind of argue for that is, well, think about how time passes when you're doing something you really, 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 really super like, versus like being in class.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it literally does. I mean, our perception of time does vary. I mean, a good example of this is if you running. When I'm doing like a 5K really hard, even though it's although it's longer with each passing year, which is sad, because time sucks. But if you're running like really, really hard, it hurts a whole bunch, it feels like a really long time. Like running a really hard mile feels like a longer time than running like an easy 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 miles. Because pain really, sort of draws time out. And so if something is really fun and enjoyable, it seems to go very quickly. And so those could be used as an argument for Leibniz's view. Time is not a thing, because it always seem to go at the same rate. It's our perception of that experience. So in a way, he kind of anticipates the relativity of time and space, although in a kind of unusual way. So space is in your mind, time is in your mind too. There is no space, there is no time out there. And the way he handles matter, extended objects, again, we can use the analogy from his time period to painting. And we can look at my very badly drawn cube-like thing. We know that people who are good at drawing stuff can create things that look really three-dimensional, and in fact can even fool us. So, here's a kind of a mean example. Many years ago, I was running at Ohio State, and a hailstorm kicked in. There might have one today. It's supposed to be a torrential thunderstorm, possibility of tornadoes and large hail tonight through tomorrow. And then I was trying to get away from the hail, so I ran up to the stadium, and I could see what looked like alcoves. And then I went up to them, and I'm like, and there are alcoves, they're painted alcoves. They're painted very, very well. So I'm just like, oh man, I'm really mad at this person now, because I'm trying to get these alcoves to avoid being hammered by hail, and the alcoves are beautifully painted, but not real. And so Leibniz does seem to be right. We can have the appearance of depth and matter without it actually being there, or so he claims. Okay, so do you buy that? Has Leibniz got it right?
Can you repeat that? Is Leibniz right?
Has he got this right? I mean, he basically says that all, everything you experience is all in your mind.
Oh, I feel like he is. I feel like he's right.
One vote for Leibniz.
Yeah, and I agree with his with the analogy about the supreme monad. We'll use the computer analogy. I agree with that.
So Leibniz gets one delegate.
Because it just makes sense, and even when you said about the kind of like explaining theory, not theory, well, I'm gonna say theories for lack of a better term, of deja vu, or being able to peek into the future and what's gonna happen. Some people may call it prophets, for religious reasons. And I believe in it personally, so I feel like he, had a point there about it's already mapped out. We're just living it. So in the cinema, I already feel.
Anyone disagree with Leibniz?
I do, but I don't know how to disprove him. I don't think that just in terms of just more scientific thinking, it relies on, his view relies on things that are testable. Because of what we can experience, we can interact with one another, things do link up. Even if this is all, a little, a hollow reactor or something that we're trapped in, we're still having the experience. I guess it's like the end of Inception, where he spins a little top. I'm not spoiling it for anybody, but he spins a little top, and the question, and it starts to wobble a little bit, but then the movie ends, so it doesn't tell you whether or not he's actually in the dream or not. And I guess Leibniz would be, he's still in the dream. He's been in the dream the whole time.
There's only the dream?
There's only the dream, and I think, it doesn't matter necessarily, because we see what we see, we observe what we observe, and, it seems a bit of a stretch to go and say that, we're all kind of locked down or individual matrix.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because intuitively, to say, it feels wrong, you know, because our lived experience seems to suggest that we are interacting. We think that when we're tasting the rainbow, we are tasting the rainbow. We think we're holding the sandwich and eating the sandwich, that we're seeing people. But as you point out, one of the challenges is, how do you show that he's wrong? Because any experience you can try to point to, like, well, I'm talking to people, I have to say, sure. You're experiencing that in your, you know, in your mind. And the challenge is, how would you break that fourth wall to show that, you know, what's really going on? So yeah, intuitively, we kind of feel that Leibniz is wrong, but as you know quite correctly, how do we show that he's actually wrong? There seems to be, you know, nothing that we can do that could disprove it. Now we also had to address the classic mind-body problem. So how does he work out, well, going to like intuition stuff, how do we work out the notion that we have, you know, we think we got like a body. So maybe one thing to say is, well, I don't feel like I'm just a monad, you know, experiences. I feel like I have a body as well, that I'm like eating a sandwich or something. Now the way Leibniz works it out is this. On one hand, you cannot eat the sandwich because the windows are, you know, the monads are windowless, but it also means they're mouthless. So this would be, for Leibniz, what it'd be like, you're eating a sandwich. Here would be all the monads that make up the sandwich. Here's the monad that's you. You have the experience of sandwich eating, and then each of the parts of the sandwich experiences as if it's being eaten. But of course, there's, you know, you're not literally eating the sandwiches, because they can't, the sandwich monads can't get into your monad. But, looked at another way, he does have a system where there is a mind and body. And my bad drawing here illustrates it. So, what would be the difference between, say, you know, the human body and like a pile of sand? Well, here's his answer. Both would be composed of monads. So if you go to the beach and you're running along the beach, there's your body and the beach. And as he sees it, like the sand would be disorganized monads. Just like we think of each grain of sand as like a monad. There's just a bunch of them. There's no real cohesion or order to them. It's just a beach. But in the case of your body and the body of, say, you know, the seagulls that are there, the sandpipers and, you know, fish and stuff, they're also composed of monads, various ones, but they're all organized. So, badly drawn, I'll use, you know, of course, the head as being like the person. This would be the monad that's you, and these would be all the monads that make up your body. So this would be like the monads that make up your hand, make up your hip, your leg, your foot, your tummy, etc. And he thinks that what makes them, these monads, your body, is that your perceptions of the monads that make up your body are stronger or closer than any others. So, if this is like the monad that makes up my tummy, or the monads making up my tummy, and my experiences of them, I have a stronger perception of those monads than other monads. So, in a way, his view is very analogous to the way we think of the body physically. You know, you've got, you know, your brain is like you, and then you've got all the parts that make up your body combined together to make up your body. It's a complex made of parts. Except in Leibniz's view, the body is made up not of, you know, spatially extended cells. It's made up of all these monads. So it wouldn't look like, actually it doesn't look like anything, but it'd be all these monads that are somehow, you know, you have your body monads, your mind monad. There's no causal interaction, but the experiences you have are closest to the experiences of your body. So when you're eating a sandwich, the monads of the sandwich have experiences that are as if they're being eaten. Your mind is having experiences as if you're eating a sandwich. The monads that make up your mouth are experiencing as if they're eating the sandwich, and you're experiencing them as if they're making up your mouth. And then when it gets to your tummy is experiencing it as if it was eating the sandwich, the sandwich is experiencing it as being digested by your tummy, and you're experiencing your experience of the tummy as if you had a tummy. So all pretty weird. But there you go. Now, does that seem needlessly complicated? Well, if everything's like in your mind, do you really need a tummy, like a tummy monad? No, I mean, you wouldn't need all that extra stuff. So you might say that, well, all you really need is the non-monads. You don't need all that extra stuff out there because it's kind of superfluous. But, you know, Leibniz can make that work as well. Okay, so we're all monads. Now, how then can we do, you raise the point about the sciencey stuff, how could we do science given Leibniz's view? Because he wanted to, like Descartes and others, he wants to reconcile science with this metaphysics, etc. Now, suppose you went to a typical scientist, or even a great scientist, a famous scientist like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you started talking about monads. How would that go over? Does he embrace the monads? Does he wear a shirt that says, I'm a monad, you're a monad too? He might, maybe you got one in a sandwich. You like sandwiches. Everyone likes sandwiches. Yeah, if you went to a physicist or biologist and said, dude, or dudette, don't be sexist, monads, they'd probably say what? No. I mean, if you had biology, do they talk about monads in biology? No. So how can we reconcile monads with science? Well, he gives the following answer. For the teleological part, the part of purpose, we're talking about the minds, you know, doing their stuff. And the mechanical explanations, he says basically this. On one hand, you could say it's legitimate. On the other hand, you could say it's kind of a cheat. And here's the part that Leibniz essentially says, well, we can talk about the seeming bodies following fixed laws. So if Leibniz was alive and not dead, and you said, Leibniz, what about all that, you know, physics and biology and so forth? Does that have any validity? And he says, yes, you can talk about them acting in terms of, you know, the laws of physics, the laws of biology. You could go, you know, take a class on physiology and talk about the digestive system, the autonomous nervous system, the central nervous system, you know, endocrinology, all that stuff. But ultimately he thinks this. The ultimate explanation for everything would be that God has put within each thing its inner nature, and each thing is what it is, so it does what it does. So for Leibniz, if you're taking a class in biology or physics, the ultimate answer to everything would be, if they say, well, why does this occur? The answer would be because, you know, God put the inner nature into the thing, therefore it is what it is, it does what it does because it is what it is. So why does the patient have cancer? Well, the answer would be is that God created cancer monads and pre-established, harmonized them with the person so that it's as if they have cancer, and the cancer is as if the cancer has that. Which takes us back to the problem of evil. So we end up with kind of a two-realm system. One is that we can, he thinks, have the model of, you know, physics, biology, and so forth, and talk as we do about physics, anatomy, physiology, biology, and so forth. But ultimately, the explanation for everything would be God. So in a way, it would kind of render physics and engineering and so forth superfluous, or so we might say. Okay, before pressing on, anything about the Leibnizing so far that needs more Leibnizing? Now, one of the, again, kind of big issues in philosophy all along has been the question about you know, free will versus versus lack of free will, determinism. And as we saw, essentially, kind of three options are: one, there is at least some free will, more than zero, however that works. Another option is there's determinism. There's no choice, there's no chance, things just are what they are. And then, of course, there's also the idea that there's some chance, randomness. Now, so what's Leibniz's position on that? Well, this is what he claims. Given what he says about the monads, and again, going with my analogy, you can think of each of us as having built within us a solid-state drive that contains all our experience, like a DVD, or actually it was Blu-ray, that contains everything that, every experience we're going to have. And it kind of plays out in our mind. So that would seem to mean there's really no free will, because if there was free will, then God would not be able to put in that, that hard drive. I mean, using an analogy, it'd be like, someone building a, like a house you're going to live in, and they're only putting in the parts you're actually going to go into. Kind of like a Truman Show type of deal. And so, if they believe you'd never go into, the bathroom on the first floor, or never go in the basement, they just wouldn't be a basement. It wouldn't be in there, because you're never going to go in there. So if there was free will, it would seem that you couldn't have all the stuff put in there, because you could just go wherever. So you wouldn't know what to put in there. Or to use another analogy, think of like a script. If you're just following the script, then just, you just stick to the script and you do what's in the script. But if you go completely off script, then everything, falls, would fall apart. So it would seem that you can't have free will given that view. It's all going to be pre-established, harmonized in there. But Leibniz does want to keep free will. So how does he do it? Well, free will for him is not that you're able to just determine, pick whatever you want and just do whatever. He thinks free will is this. Free will is acting in accord with your inner nature. As I say, freedom is doing what it is that you do because you are what you are. And my badly drawn thing is this. Lack of free will would be like being a badly drawn puppet, where the strings go to God and God controls us like puppets, actively in real time making us do stuff. Now, Leibniz says that God doesn't do that. And one reason for this is, according to Leibniz, God can't do that, because there's no causal interaction between the monads. They're all isolated. So then what do we have? Well, we're not puppets on the string controlled by God. What we are is, going back to my bad drawing, we have our inner nature, all that we are, all that we will be, and it plays out. So for him, freedom is you do what you do because you are what you are, and you're not controlled from the outside like a puppet. To use another analogy, this would be like, well, think of like two different types of drones. Most commonly today, if you see a drone, is there someone controlling it? Like a little, yeah. So really, it's like a fancy remote controlled vehicle. They're controlling it, like a puppet. It does what they will it to do. Now, more sophisticated, robots. Well, what's the difference between a robot? A natural robot and one of those so-called drones, or a remote control car.
There's no human in direct control of it typically.
Yeah, exactly. So with like a remote control car, you get the little thing to get a person controlling it like a puppet. With an actual, true robot, it's got its, computer on board, and as you said, there's no direct human control. It's doing what it's doing, autonomously. Now, of course, it was, built by like humans, but it, in a sense, is free because it's not controlled, it's autonomous. It's not controlled by remote control. And so what Leibniz is essentially saying, to use this modern analogy, we are like robots acting in accord with our programming, as opposed to being remote controlled cars, being remote controlled by God. So we are free. So let's read about that. Is the robot free? Well, I guess it depends again on what you mean by freedom. Like when Mel Gibson yells, "freedom," at the end of Braveheart, he was being torn apart by horses. So what do we mean? Leibniz says this is all we can want. You want freedom, this is the best you can get. Sorry, kids. So is he right? Is that the best we can get? That we're not puppets, we're robots? Yes, no, maybe. Results hazy. Shake the 8-ball again. No. No. One vote for no. Do you have any A's? By the power of democracy. Any seconds? No is seconded. So no, that is not freedom. Problem solved. I assume we get medals for that as well. Yeah, I mean, one argument for it is, well, yeah, true. I mean, I guess not being a remote control car would be better, but of course the robot is still, you'd say, still controlled by its creator. So Leibniz is essentially saying, God is like the robot manufacturer. He makes us, pre-programs us, turns us loose, and even though he's not controlling us like a remote control car, we're, you might say, not actually free. But Leibniz is saying, well, you are free because everything you do comes from you. It's all you. So you're free. And then he would point out that people really don't know what they want when it comes to free will. When you ask people, like, what do you really want? People really don't know, perhaps. Now he calls this compatibilism, which some people think of as, again, kind of like a cheat, but that's his claim. So compatibilism is basically the view that you are free, in a sense you're not controlled like a puppet, but you are kind of determined in the sense that, there's not like randomness or free choice, but you're free because you do what you do because you are what you are, and you're not controlled from the outside like a puppet or a remote control car. And he claims that's the only sort of free will we can expect. So I guess it's like, when you get dinner, it's not that great, but the return is nothing, so you just kind of choke it down, because starvation is worse. Now, the final thing today about Leibniz is the city of God. Now, this is kind of theological as well, but it does bring up some philosophical issues. As Leibniz sees this, we're all a part of a great city, God's city. And of course, God is the supreme monad, and they're all the lesser monads that are part of this kingdom. And he says he is to us what an inventor is to his machine, a prince is to his subject, a father is to his children. And the city of God is the assemblage of all spirits, the most perfect state under the most perfect monarch. Now, we just raise an interesting theological question here, which is, why do we exist? Or more specifically, why did God create us? Which is a good question. Why? Now, this is what he claims. In a way, and this, not surprisingly, caused him some trouble, he claims that God needed to create us for a couple reasons. First is this: God's wisdom and power don't require us. If there was no us, and he's just God, God would still be as wise as he is. He would still be as powerful as he is. He would still be as knowing as he is. But in order for God to have a certain of his attributes, it requires that we exist. So, one way to put it, which may be kind of like blasphemy, is that God needs us. What does he need us for? Well, the first thing he needs us for is this: glory. If we did not exist, God would have no glory. How? Well, we can use an analogy. If Beyonce was alone in the world, would Beyonce be famous? If it was just Beyonce in the world, the last Beyonce.
She wouldn't have fans.
Yeah, there'd be no fame, because they would just be her. There'd be no, to be famous, you gotta have what? You have to have admiring crowds.
Fanatics.
Yeah, no fans, no fame. Likewise, if God existed and had all his awesomeness, well, he wouldn't have any glory, because glory requires the existence of other things. So we need to recognize his greatness and goodness and admire him. So God needs us to praise him, to worship him, otherwise he would have no glory. So the Bible says things like glory unto God. God would have no glory without us. So reason one is he needs us for that, which of course could be regarded as problematic, because if someone's very religious and when you say to someone, well, God totally needs us, he needs fans, maybe regarded as offensive to some. But in a way it does make sense, because if there is no us, God has no glory. Secondly, of course, he also needs us for, he argues, for his goodness. How so? Well, and this becomes, an interesting theoretical question. Suppose you're all alone in the world. Does it make sense to say that you're good or evil, that there's nothing else? Well, on one hand, you might think, well, being good or evil is determined by what? By what you do to others. So if there's no one else to do anything to or with, you can't be good or evil. Now, of course, it could be argued that a person could be bad or good to themselves. So if there was only one being in existence, it could be treating itself badly and be evil, or treat itself well and be good. Or we could argue that goodness is not a matter of what you do, it's a matter of what you are. So you could be good even with nothing else in the world, or you could be evil with nothing else. And so the glory part is pretty settled, no fans, no fame. But the goodness, could be debated, because maybe God could be good even with nothing else. But Leibniz thinks that we need, essentially us for him to be good, things for him to be good too. Next time we'll pick up with the machinery of justice, the justice machines, and then problems and impacts, and then head on to more stuff.
How long does it give us to take the test?
For standard test, exams 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get 1 hour from the moment you click it, and it